Okay, today we're going to be making a fly called the strip of Bou Leech. We're starting out with a size 2 partridge attitude streamer hook. This is 2 tendonier, flat wax nylon. Going to go ahead and get our thread on there. Going to make a little bump because this does have lead eyes on it. So we're going to take the large dumbbell eyes and we'll get that on the top of the hook shank. This fly does ride hook point up in the water. I'm going to show you how to do the version with weed guards. So we'll secure that eye. I'm going to advance my thread all the way down to about halfway around the bend of the hook. And then we're going to bring it back up. I'm going to make my weed guards out of 30-pound mono. So we're going to do one on each side. We'll get the one side down and now the other, and then we're going to bring our thread all the way back down to where we stopped before, and then we'll bring this back up. Now we're going to be using a rabbit strip. This is a Magnum rabbit strip. This one is light olive over olive with black bars. You can do any color in these. I make my rabbit strip about 2 inches long. What I'm going to do is I'm going to line my rabbit strip up with the dumbbell eyes. I'm going to take this back and I'm going to poke a hole using the hook point. And then I'm going to take my scissors and right where I made that hole, I'm just going to widen that hole up just a little tiny bit in the rabbit strip. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to feed our mono straight through that hole, both pieces. Sometimes easier said than done. Alright, so we're sliding that through, and then with that we're going to push the hook straight through that same hole as well. Alright, now I'm going to slide that rabbit strip down past where I tied those weed guards in, and then we'll get this back on the vise. I'm going to flip this over. Make sure our thread comes back to just before the bend of the hook. We'll slide that rabbit into place. I'm just going to wet my fingers a little bit. I'm going to brush that rabbit forward. And then I'm going to secure that rabbit strip down in the back. Now I'm going to make this one multicolored just for fun. And again, you can be as creative with the colors as you want. So I'm just going to take that little tag end and I'm going to hold it back up out of the way. Tie that loose stuff down. And now we're going to use some marabou. I'm going to use orange. This is just a blood quill. The extra select marabou works really, really well on this. I'm going to take it by the tip. I'm going to brush all those other fibers back. I'm going to tie that tip into the bottom of the hook shank. I'm going to advance my thread. And then we're going to palmer this marabou forward. Now the reason that we do this is tip-tied palmered marabou breathes unbelievably free in the water. You get this pulsing motion that is just incredible. This fly really comes to life. As simple as it is, comes to life in the water. So right behind the eyes, we're going to tie that down, clip off that extra. And I'm going to take my brush and I'm just going to brush that marabou out, flip it over to the top, and I'm going to separate that to the sides of the hook shank. And you can see we've still got this little piece of rabbit. And what we're going to do is I'm going to brush that marabou back and I'm going to pull that rabbit strip down on top and I'm going to tie that down. Cut off any of the excess. And now I'm going to make a little crisscross on top of this. And what that's going to do is help secure everything. I broke my thread, so bear with me for a second here. Alright. We'll get our thread back on there. Now I like to use this glow-in-the-dark flash. I tend to fish these kind of deep. They've become a staple for me for catching walleye on the fly. So we're going to put 4 strands of glow-in-the-dark flash on each side. We'll tie that down. Now what I'm going to do is take another piece of marabou, and this time I'm going to use an olive marabou. And once again, we're going to tip tie this. Advance my thread towards the eye of the hook, and then we're going to palmer this. First behind the eyes, 2 or 3 wraps. And then I'm going to bring it forward in front of the eyes, and we'll make a couple of wraps. Alright, I'm going to pull off the excess, and then we'll tie this down. Snip off that tag end. And now I'm going to pull all that marabou straight back. And I'm going to make a nice smooth thread head, pushing all that marabou back up against the eyes. Okay, now we're going to flip this over, and we're going to attach our weed guard to the front of this hook. So I'm going to take one side, and I'll bring it up along the hook, right up against those eyes. And we'll take the other side, secure it down there, make a couple of wraps, and now I'm going to pop this out of the vise, and I'm just going to measure up my weed guards, even them up, make sure they're sitting exactly where I want them to protect that hook from both sides. Okay, that looks pretty good. We'll get this back in the vise. I'm going to make a few more wraps to make sure they're good and secure. I'm going to cut that off. Now I'm leaving about 1/8 of an inch of mono after I cut that off, and I'm just going to use a lighter, and I'm going to warm up those tips of the mono, and then I'm going to push them down into that thread. And what that does is it makes sure that that mono can never slip out of our thread wraps. Bring our thread back up, and now I'm going to take fly enhancer legs. This just happens to be a light blue over pumpkin, which is a great crayfishy looking color. And I'm going to take 2 legs on each side of this fly. So I'm going to fold them in half right over the thread. I'm going to cut off the ends that hold them together. And I'm going to push those so that they're right up on top of those dumbbell eyes. 2 on one side and then 2 on the other side. We'll make a couple more wraps through them. Make sure they're nice and secure. I'm going to bring one more up and through. Advance our thread, and then we're just going to tie this off. And we're going to use a little bit of this Loon head cement and just hit our thread wraps with this head cement. Both sides, top and bottom. And that's it. That's a finished strip of Bou Leech.